Hey, good day. We worked very closely with the ITL team of, I would say, localization engineers and product managers. They're probably going to tell you a little bit more about their roles today. But all you need to know is that they're absolutely brilliant, and they went with every single implementation idea that we had with them. And that was quite a journey. So they're here to tell you about it today. Let's start with the story of the company. I know that John has a story about how the whole MT process started, what ITL essentially is, what you do. So John, the floor is yours. Please let us know how the whole process began.
Thank you, Anastasia. ETL, or ITL if you want to call it in English, is an LSP, but not just an LSP. We also create content. We've got authors that write documentation, and we've also got an intelligent solutions department that program connectors and other various tools for us. But today, the three of us here, Thilo, myself, and Christine, we're all from the translation department. We are based in Germany, and we've got subsidiaries in Austria and Switzerland and Romania. And we serve basically the German-speaking companies in Germany, Switzerland, Austria, but not just German-speaking companies. And I think that's one of the reasons why these companies work with us, because they have a good connection with us because we speak their language. So how did we start with MT? Well, I think there was various false starts, I think, over the years, because to get on the MT ladder was just much too difficult. The hurdles were much too high. You had to have massive amounts of data. You needed rocket science experts to set it all up for you. It just wasn't viable. But then about 5 years ago, our customers started calling us up and were asking us about DeepL. And because DeepL, the translations from DeepL suddenly were just brilliant. The quality was very high. And of course, the pressure was on us then to figure out how we could start using MT. And of course, DeepL makes it very easy to use MT, very high quality translations, a plugin for all the various different, or most of the various different translation tools, and very cost effective, not very expensive. So that done, I mean, the translations were very good, but how can you use this in a productive environment? I mean, major issue for us was the pricing. How do we price this? And this has been a problem for many companies over the years. I mean, I was at conferences years ago where companies, big name companies, not translation providers, but companies themselves with translation departments, where they were using, after the translation, they were working out the prices. They're using post-editing distances to pay the translators for the work already done. But of course, as an LSP, you need to be able to figure out beforehand, when you're making a quote for the customer, what it's going to cost them or what the price reduction is going to be. So we spent quite a while trying to figure that one out. And we came up with a solution. We call it the MT factor. So basically what we do is we take the content of our customers' translation memories and retranslate the whole lot with the selected engine, MT engine, DeepL in quite a lot of cases. And we compare it to the already existing human translations. And we work out, we calculate a factor. Usually it's about between 70 and 80%. And this indicates for us whether it's usable.
Sorry.
We can, with the MT factor, we can figure out whether it's the translation or the MT provider is actually usable for that, if it provides enough high quality for the selected language pair. And we can work out how much work the translators or the post editors need to do on the MT translations. So with the MT factor, we were able to provide our customers with a price in advance during the quoting stage. And the MT factor was also confirmed. Basically, we've confirmed that we're on the right way by the translators, the feedback from the translators. The feedback corresponded to the basically to the MT factor. So that's how we started. Once we worked out how to do the pricing, basically, there was no stopping us. And nowadays we translate up to or over 1 million words a month with MT for post editing.
That is very impressive. Thank you for sharing the story. And there is definitely no stopping you. I can tell that from the experience. If there is anything in the market that's available, you always want to try it. You always want to do something new and interesting. So yeah, and then we talked a little bit about how the whole process started. I think it's also going to be interesting for our audience today to learn what the technical sides of things were. So for that, I think that's mostly when our collaboration started as well. And as John mentioned, imagine how terrified Custom MT was when we were told that we were having this client that loves speaking German. Nobody on our team speaks German, so we were terrified, but we decided to go for it and see where it goes. So Thilo, the floor is all yours. Can you tell us a little bit more about the technical side of things, how MT started from the technical perspective?
Yes, of course. As John already said, DeepL was very easy to use in our cut tools, but we soon learned that for some of our customers, DeepL translation quality just wasn't good enough. We had one customer in particular that we were translating catalog texts for. So we were dealing with very short text snippets, loads of terminology, loads of very specific terms, and DeepL couldn't handle those kind of texts. So we started to look into trained engines because we had a lot of translation material there. And we've seen that the translation quality was getting better, but we had so many language pairs, so we couldn't handle it all by ourselves. That's why we came to you. Because I think we now have about 13 engines in production, all trained by you. And what was very important is that we had a very good process for picking the right provider, because it's not always the same provider that delivers the best translation quality for each language pair. So we had to deal with different providers, test them all out. And the next problem was in our cut tools that each provider basically had its own plugin for cut tools. So we had to deal with loads of subscriptions and identification in Trados Studio, which we are mainly using. And we had to install loads of plugins and had to remember which engine we'd have to use for which language pair. And it was a huge hassle for us. So when you published your custom MT plugin for Trados Studio, it allowed us to have it all in one plugin. So we just had your plugin, and then we could set up the templates for each language pair and each engine provider. And basically what we're now doing is just opening the project, adding the custom MT plugin, and then the template is already there. So we don't have to think about which engine we have to use and which language pair we're using with, we're dealing with. So that made the process for us very much easier.
And not just that, Thilo, working with Custom MT, I mean, Custom MT, we figured out pretty quickly, they know which engines are most suitable for a specific language pair and domain, which is something that we just don't have the knowledge of that. We'd have to be, I don't know, we'd have to spend hours investigating and scouring the web to figure out all this. So that's another major
That's right, yeah.
advantage. Yeah.
Especially with German as our source language, because there are lots of providers. I know we challenged you, Anastasia, a lot when we were dealing with German. Hungarian, I think, was the last thing that was very
it was very challenging.
Challenging, yeah, because there were not many providers that offer this language pair.
Yeah, that's true. But I love that we had this cooperation going when we also included your linguists in the process. So they were giving us like feedback all the time. And that, I think that was also a crucial part of our processes, because we involved your team in the training, we involved in picking engines, and I think that worked out best at the end. Also, John, I would definitely disagree with you. After all the client meetings that we had with you, you're definitely experts as well. You've had hours of training. We did that together. We've learned everything. So I would definitely call you experts in MT Stay.
Yeah, we're experts, all right. I mean, we know what we're doing, and we know how to make it work. But it's the nitty gritty that sometimes just, I mean, we're a small department, and we would just be overwhelmed with the whole lot.
That's true. I'm going to use this moment that Thilo, I don't know, intentionally or unintentionally provided me with, but Thilo told you a little bit about the plugin and what we do. So I'll do a very quick product placement, just so you know, switch things up a bit. So I'm going to screen share for a second and show you what we're talking about. So the plugin to Trotters will basically lead you to this console that CustomMT developed that ITL are using at the moment. All you'll get here, so you'll get API connection to Capital or to any other integration that you need. So let's presume that, you know, I'm using Trotters, then I can have this API key, place it to Trotters, and then I'm going to have access to all of this. So we'll give you access to different stock engines that are already used here by default. If you have any custom engines, you can also add them right here by clicking New Engine. And so depending on the provider you choose, you'll get different credentials that you need. We can also help you set it up if you are interested. Then we get to templates, where you can basically select which language pair with which engine you would want to translate, which comes very handy. So you don't have to do this in Trotters. The routing is going to be done automatically for you the second you choose a template. And also, we have this function, which is DeepL Glossary, because I think Thilo mentioned how important it is to use custom terminology on certain projects. So we do have this. Yeah. Sorry, I thought I had to meet somebody. If it's an accidental microphone thing, that happens on Zoom. Sorry. So yeah, we also have this DeepL Glossary function, which is very important if you want to use a custom terminology. You can basically upload the file that you have, create the glossary, and then use it for your translations. So I think that also came in very handy. So that's the platform in 5 minutes that Thilo is talking about, and that we can use in Trotters for your translations. Okay. So what kind of projects do you translate today with MT?
Christine, I think you're muted.
Sorry, I didn't hear my name. I am Christine. I work as a project manager at ITL. Together with John, we have a lot of projects that we set up. And my main client actually really thrives to working only with MT. And at the moment, you are doing a lot. Actually, he decided to translate all the projects that they have with machine translation, from the website information coming via XML to the InDesign brochures, which might have contents that are technical and marketing. So we have figured out a way to use multiple MT engines in Trados at the same time, so that we can have contents that are marketing based and contents that are technical, so that the translator doesn't have to choose from different databases outside his working space. So we are really trying to use this one platform and integrate all the MTs that we have in it to have one process that is usable for everyone.
Yeah, that sounds very good. And Christine, obviously you're an expert, you know, in connection with actual linguists that are working on the project. Since you're the project manager, you're the one who's dealing with, you know, providing linguists with new technology, but also hearing all the feedback. So what the feedback has been so far? And Also, are you measuring edit distance for any reason to help the linguists navigate these changes?
Actually, we are taking the translators and the linguists from the beginning of the process of choosing an MT engine. So they are part of the process and they see what changes we are aiming to have. They choose with us the correct or the most suitable MT engine. So they see the changes and they also acquire more acceptance for this change in the process from human translation to post-editing. And they also see that they can get more projects because they have less time to work on a project and work on even more projects. So we usually use post-editing when we have feedback that is not very clear, so that we can just measure it or have a better insight in the differences between the projects before they were post-edited and afterwards, and have a better base to talk with you about the changes we could do in training, and also with the clients and the translators, and have a better approach of the problems that occur during post-editing. But I have to say that we don't have to use very often, because since the translators and the clients are integrated in the whole process from the beginning to the end, to the point where we really start post-editing, we actually don't have a lot of feedback or questions or problems afterwards when we're in the process.
Yeah, so I guess it's one of the best things, it's good that you don't have feedback, because if you did have it, it would probably be negative. So no feedback is a good situation in that case.
Yeah. In this case, yes.
Yeah. Okay. For everything but we do still, I remember actually Google translating myself different German feedback just to see how you linguists like or dislike the engines. That was fun. Should definitely learn German after this webinar. First thing, new year, new me, learning German. I wanted to ask you, what do you do with customers that request to have very little or even no post editing? Have you ever had projects like this?
Yes, maybe about once a month, maybe we might have a customer who wants a very quick translation of maybe a lot of documents. And we explain that, this is possible with MT, but without post editing, because that would take too long and the customer requires it very quickly. So we explain the restrictions to him, and we perform a so-called raw MT on his documents. And usually these are customers that are maybe in a tendering phase, preparing quotes for other customers, and they need to know what's in these documents. Sometimes these documents are Chinese or Russian or whatever, and the quality of DeepL or Google is actually so good that it's enough for the customer to understand what it's all about. But we explain the restrictions to him, and we explain the pitfalls of MT, and yeah, so that's usually works out quite well. And most customers nowadays, most customers know how to translate themselves in DeepL, but when they've got multiple different formats and maybe vast amount of documents, they don't know how to handle that. I mean, they can't just copy and paste everything into DeepL, or even if they have the document function in DeepL, some documents just can't be uploaded. But we know how to do that. So that's our forte.
Yeah, no,
Also,
absolutely. I can, yeah.
Sorry. No, I just wanted to add that sometimes if customers have those projects where they want to just translate huge amounts of text because they just want to know what's in there, they benefit also from their translation memories, because when they do it through us, we are always using their translation memories first. So if there's already existing translations from the past, we are using them, and only if there's new segments or new text, we fill this, or we translate that with DeepL or Google, depending on the language. Yeah, so that's a huge benefit for customers, I think, because we often had like the customers saying, why do we need you? Because I can translate this all by myself on the DeepL platform. And yeah, file types and translation memories are those two factors that, yeah, they don't have and we do.
Yeah, but
Absolutely.
there's another there's another thing as well. I mean, most customers who ask, why do we need you? Well, we have examples of the pitfalls of using MT. I mean, where translations are incorrect, and then they begin to understand, it begins to dawn on them, oh, that could have been quite dangerous if I had just accepted it, the DeepL translation. And then they begin to understand why they need post-editing.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, so translation memories in general are a very, very valuable resource that you can use for different, in different parts of your production. So as you already mentioned, it is super useful to have it in your arsenal. So once the client comes to you, you already have the translation memory from this particular area, so you can get the matching translation as quick as possible. But it is also very useful when we're doing the engine training for you, because a big part of it is, you know, custom terminology. It's very specific. Let's say it's a legal translation, or maybe there is another domain, and it's very, very specific. So having this translation memory can serve you twice in your life cycle. So first, they, you know, direct match from the translation memory once you're doing the translation, or second, they're also used for training. And that's a very, very big part of what we did with you, because we used your data to train your engines, and I think that worked out pretty well for us.
Yes, I mean,
Thilo,
without the sorry, the TMs are essential for the MT engine training. Otherwise, you might as well just use DeepL. If you don't have the customers existing translations, then you might as well not even bother.
Absolutely. So yeah, if you're using DeepL, is great. If you're using DeepL, we highly recommend to use glossary as well for that. So I think, you know, if you don't have translation memory, at least use the glossary or try to make it more personalized for every client that you're dealing with. That's, you know, the overarching recommendation, I think. Thilo, I remember the last time we had this conversation, we talked a little bit about the linguist side and, you know, how in ITL your approach is different because you're all translators. How does that change your approach to MT? So what's this, let's say, more humane side of all this technological implementation? How are your translators reacting? Why is it important for you to have this background? Tell us a little bit more about this.
Yeah, Christine, maybe you want to start.
Well, the reaction is quite different from translator to translator. You have translators who already work with post-editing, who already have some experience with it, and they're quite open for it, and are open for new technologies. There are this younger, let's say younger, not only the youngest one, but we have a few who are open for changes, and then you have those who say, oh no, I'm going to lose my job because now we have post-editing and I'm a human translator, I'm doing a good job. And these are the difficult ones to get on this, let's say, boat of post-editing, because you have to do a lot more of work of explaining how it works, and that their job is not going away just because we're changing the processes, but we're actually having more work by changing the processes. So that's something that I have seen with my clients, that opening this door to post-editing is also opening the door to more languages that they can translate, more markets that they can reach in their own languages. And this actually is leading to more projects. So the translator don't have less to do just because they're doing post-editing, to actually have more to do, but they can do more work in less time. So that's the most important, Magdalena, the most important part. Sorry, setz dich dahin und sag nichts mehr.
I think I can take over.
Yeah, you can take over.
It's always nice to have more guests with us. That's always amazing.
Zoom meetings. I just wanted to say that I think what's also important is to make the translators part from the beginning of the MT process, like to get them on board, because what we're doing is when we're training an engine, we're training several different providers, and we send the translations to our translators, and they can decide which one is the best, what are the problems with which engine. And I think that's also an important part of getting the translators on board of post-editing, because of course there is this great fear, I think, for all of us, because it's always out there, that due to AI and technology, we're all using our jobs, but I don't think that's true. So we just have to figure out a way of dealing with this new technology and in the end benefit from it, because like Christine said, normally maybe they get less for each project, as do we from the customers, but in the end we're getting more projects. So in the end, the benefit could be better even than before. But yeah, it all stands and falls with our translators. So it's important for us as well to get them on board from the beginning, so they don't feel left out.
Yeah, 100%. So we talked about you as a company. We talked a little bit about translators, how they feel about it. I think it's very interesting to talk about your clients. So do you get requests for MT? How do your clients feel about it? So can you give us some insights of what your clients need at the moment? Because we have a lot of LSPs today in the call, and I think they all want to know, how to interest their clients, how to serve them better, how to interest them. So what is that you do that makes your client want it?
Well, most clients nowadays know about MT and they demand MT basically. So if you're not providing MT as in production as an LSP, then you're going to lose clients. That said, I think the biggest wish that clients have at the moment is for terminology usage in MT, because that's one of the biggest hurdles. Is like if you're using a stock MT engine like Google or DeepL, they're not always going to get the terminology right, and the post editors have more work with the MT translations, correcting the terminology. So that's one of the major things that customers demand at the moment, is the use of terminology. So you get that basically with a trained engine with data from the customer, using the customer's TMs, and the quality of the MT engine might not be as good as DeepL or Google, but the terminology is used. And so that's one of the bigger issues that we've got at the moment using MT. Or one of the things we are working on at the moment is how to use the glossary function in DeepL. And with your plugin, you have as you showed previously, you have the function to use the glossary function of DeepL, and it works very well. I mean, DeepL works very well with this glossary function. It's amazing how they managed it. But what we're discovering after some testing now at the moment is that the results are not as good as we might have expected. And maybe Thilo, you can say a few words on that.
Yeah, well, basically the results depend extremely on the form of the glossary. So what we are doing in the tests is taking the terminology database from Trados Studio or Multiterm and try to convert it into a deeper glossary. But in the terminology database, there are a lot of synonyms or even forbidden terms. And so you have to put work in it just to convert it into a deeper glossary, because the deeper glossary is a pure source term, target term glossary. So you don't have the opportunity to put synonyms in there. And especially with one customer, we have different translations for one source term, depending on the department in which the term occurs. So it's really hard to put one glossary into DeepL and then expect that all the translations are right, because you first have to create a new glossary out of the term base you were having or you were working with before. But as a sample result for that, we had a very special term in French for security. That was right in certain occasions, but in most occasions in general language, it would have been wrong. So DeepL, of course, used it in all occasions. And so the translation was actually worse than without a glossary. So yeah, you can just expect to get better translations just by converting a terminology base into glossary. You have to really look into it and yeah, figure out how to do a DeepL glossary. But I think especially for languages where you don't have any translation memories or not enough training material, it's a great opportunity to get into MT and to get better results than with the stock engines. Yeah, so yeah, maybe just to add that what's special about the DeepL glossary is that it's not like, for example, in Google also has a glossary function, but it's just a one-to-one replacement. So it just takes the source term and puts the target term as it is in the glossary. And DeepL glossary function does recognize terms in the source text, even if it's how do you say declined, yeah, plural or in all the grammatical cases we have in German, it all recognizes them and puts the translation in the right context. So that's what's special about the DeepL glossary. And yeah, I think you implemented it in December last year, so it's pretty new to us too, and we're doing heavy testing at the moment. But yeah, I think that's one of the.
Since you're doing heavy testing on DeepL, thank you so much. Since you're doing heavy testing on DeepL, we actually have a question regarding this, so I think that's going to be interesting to see what your take on it is. It's a very long question. So Dion, sorry if I mispronounced your name. Would you want to unmute yourself and ask it, or would you prefer everybody to read in the chat, which, you know, it's going to be a very long question?
Sure, I can ask it. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I'm from Omniscient Technologies, which is an MT provider, but DeepL uses document mode translation like we do, and workflows when it comes to using document mode. So with document mode, it's translating large chunks of the document at once, and you get the context of the document. Okay, so if I say I caught a virus, you don't know if it's my health or my computer, but if the sentence above talked about my health or my body, then you've got context. So that's how DeepL works with document mode. That's how we work as well. But there's a couple of comments that sort of raised a few flags for me in terms of workflow, and I wanted to know how LSPs were addressing those in particular. So the question I've got is, if you say we only send the non-TM matches, then what you're doing is you're not sending the document as a whole or document in chunks. Let's say a paragraph. Okay, so you're therefore not sending the context. So you're actually forcing DeepL to go back to sentence mode.
Yes, that's just due to how our translation tools work. I mean, we're using the plugin in our cut tools to also benefit from QA and terminology and our translation memories. And that's how the plugin, or definitely how it works in cut tools. You always have this segmentation, and then you have just one segment, and this segment is sent to DeepL. But we haven't had a lot of cases where this would have been an issue, I think, because it works pretty well even without context. That's what we had all learned from our projects so far.
And we've also got post-editing.
Yeah, I mean, post-editing should capture it. I mean, we're guiding some of our customers, and we're in our plugins and that we're adding things in, like even if you've got a TM match, submit the sentences nearby, and then you can still choose to use the TM or the one that came from the MT. And that gives a much higher level of quality contextually. Yeah,
that's actually a pretty good strategy, if that's possible technically.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Do you have any more questions? Okay, we do have another question. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Hi, I'm Sterango from Ultras, Bulgaria. I have two questions. First of all, in order to use the custom MT plugin, do I need to sign up for every single engine, or I'm getting the access through the custom MT plugin? This is the first question. And the second question is to all of you. Do you have any experience with language combinations which does not include the general languages like English, German, or Spanish? For example, what about Hungarian into Czech or Romanian into Greek? I'm asking this because I'm from Bulgaria and my clients are asking for Bulgarian into Greek or Bulgarian to Romanian, and I'm searching for solutions. Thank you very much.
That's our favorite question when we have very interesting language combinations. I probably let this question to you. I'm gonna take the first question. So in order to sign up with DeepL and how to use it in Custom MT plugin, if you sign up with the Custom MT plugin, we're gonna give you access to stock engines, including DeepL. So once you sign into Custom MT plugin, you're using it, you'll have all the stock engines available to you. Now, if you want to use other functionalities, such as, for instance, creating glossaries, then in that case, you will need to sign up with DeepL separately. Or you can, so you'll need to create all the custom engines or DeepL plus glossary on your side, and then just use it without plugin. But if you just want the stock engines, you'll be able to use them once you logged into the custom MT plugin. I hope that answers your question. And what is your experience with language combinations with less popular languages? I think somebody, would you like to take this question and tell everybody a little bit about our experience? What was it, Hungarian to Polish? Is that what we did? Because I remember we had an engine.
Yeah, we always had German or English as source language. I think we never did something that exotic.
So German to Hungarian,
but we had
very
German into Hungarian. We did have some projects with it's weird to call it exotic languages because there are so many speakers of it. But yeah, in terms of machine translation, I think Bulgarian is exotic. I think we never had Bulgarian actually. We never had a Bulgarian project where we used MT. But we sometimes have
Greek to Bulgarian project. We did with Google, not for you, but I know that we had like a Greek to Bulgarian project. So it works, it exists, it works. You might need to spend a little bit more time figuring out which engine suits best for you. You might need to collect a little bit more data to train the engine. But yeah, definitely worth giving it a try. Sorry for interruption.
No, never mind. I just wanted to say that, sometimes we're using DeepL also for these exotic languages. I think we had Finnish to Norwegian or something like that. And since DeepL, at least in my opinion, I think they're using a relay language. So they are translating it into English and then into the other language. So that works in general very well. So it doesn't make a difference if you're translating from English or from another language. But I think if you're looking into engine training, you definitely need someone like Custom MT to look into all the providers to search for a provider that does support this language. I think
that's always a good challenge.
For Eastern Europe languages, Globalese could be a solution because I know they have a lot of Eastern European languages.
Yeah, that's true. Definitely worth taking a look at. I see another question about pricing. So we do have all the price details on the page that I think Kate is going to resend you the link to the plugin. If you scroll down, you can see all the details about pricing. We do have different subscription modes. So depending whether you're a small business, you're a bigger company, you want to choose different subscription modes. So I think that's maybe better to consult the website because it's going to give you all the details. If you just scroll down and you will see different subscription modes, so you can see what suits you best, because I think that's better than if I'm going to start giving you different random numbers. The link is going to be in the chat in a second. Kate is resending it. So yeah, please just scroll down there and you will see different subscription modes. And if you're still confused and if you still want to know more details, please reach out to us. you can reach out to me directly and I'll be happy to help you choose the best subscription rate and the best pricing. Okay. Any other trick questions about very, very rare language pairs or something else? Okay, we have another question from Konstantin. Konstantin, would you like to mute yourself and ask the question?
No, I just have a quick question. Since ITL is one of the major core companies of the German market, you gentlemen and lady are exposed very much to the most important German customers, which are the automotive producers and manufacturers. And I guess they come to you for advice on language AI, which is blossoming this year, from machine translation, DeepL to ChatGPT and other technologies which are coming to the market. So you know best what is going on there. Do you have a perspective of how this largest and some of the most important organizations in the world are approaching MT, and what is the impact on the LSP business? Do these large organizations switch to no human in the loop? Do they refer always to you for using translation memory and terminology? How do you add value in the next 5 years working with them? I think it's a long question, but
it's a long and difficult question, and this chat was going so well, Konstantin, until you came up with that question. A difficult question. I mean, I can't give any details here, but the customers you mentioned, they're not just looking into translating documents with MT. They're actually looking for bigger solutions, and they need, for example, instant translation for corporate communication using their terminology all over the world between the employees. They're actually looking for bigger solutions and not just for translation itself, translating documents. And yeah, that's a difficult question, and you need to get our CEO on the line here to answer that one.
thank you very much.
A lot of chat questions. I'm just a very quick comment. I'm saying this in the chat. Somebody asked whether they needed to have Trados installed on the PC. The answer is, if you want to use custom MT platform, you don't need to have Trados. That's a completely separate thing. We also have a translation mode, so you can just get your translations straight on the console. Now, if you're already using a CAT tool such as Trados, that I presume that you would want to have it installed, and you would probably benefit from using our plugin to it. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so I think if we don't have any more questions, maybe it's time to wrap up. And I have a final question for me. What do you believe is essential in an LSP machine translation program in 2023? Because we just stepped into the new year. You know, what's important to have in your program in 2023 and in the future in general?
As I mentioned previously, I think terminology integration, and we're especially looking into the DeepL glossary function. We're testing it already and seeing how to use that. I think one of the major issues we'll have with that is because we're seeing that the function, the glossary function of DeepL, although it looked like it promised to be like the biggest leaps and advantages in MT. Now we're seeing that it actually sometimes messes it up. So what we'll need to do is we'll need to shave down customers' terminology into suitable glossaries for DeepL, so that the language itself, the translations themselves, aren't being messed up by the glossaries. That's what we're going to have to look into, and we'll need terminologists to work on that. I mean, they'll have to go through customer terminology databases and exclude all the usual words which are freely used in the language, and just maybe reduce it to product names and very, very specific customer internal terminology. That's one of the issues we'll have, I think, this year.
Thank you. Hopefully we're going to find a solution for it too. But yeah, that was a really good sum up. Thank you so much, John. Anything else anybody wants to add?
Maybe generally speaking, besides from MT, things like the custom MT plugin, for example, is to make processes easier. So you need as few clicks as possible to get to what you want. We see that a lot in our customers too. So we're building a lot of connectors, for example, that go directly to the customer, so they don't have to send us an email with the files that need to be translated, but they just click on a button and then it comes to us, and then we click on another button and it's being machine translated. I think those are things that we'll see in Operace in 2023 as well.
Yeah, because although we've been using MT now in production for almost 5 years, a lot of it is still manual clicks. I mean, to get the files pre-translated with the various different engines, it's manual clicking, and you have to wait until it's done. And I mean, depending on the load, I think on DeepL sometimes it's, for example, DeepL is very quick. During the day, it can get slower, and you're like waiting for hours for a large project to be pre-translated. But what we've seen is that through the custom MT plugin, we're reducing our manual clicks, and it seems to be quicker.
Thank you. And just to make sure, we did not ask you to say that. That was very genuine feedback. I promised everybody in this room, we did not ask for this feedback. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining. John, Thilo, Christine, thank you so much for coming, for being amazing headliners on today's webinar. It was my pleasure to have this conversation with you. If anybody in the audience still has any questions, I left my email in the chat. You can email me directly. You can also go to our LinkedIn page. You can go to our website, and we'll make sure to help you with any of the questions that you have. So with that, thank you, everybody. Thank you for an amazing webinar, and I hope to see everybody soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a nice evening or day, depending on the time zone.
Bye.